Hi, my name is Melissa Trudinger and I'm one of the writers for the APA's In Motion magazine. I'm here with APA titled Sports and Exercise Physiotherapist and World Champion waterski jumper Jacinta Carroll at the Australian Sports Commission and Australian Institute of Sport Women in Sport Congress. Jacinta, tell me a bit about yourself and why you're here.
So as you've already beautifully described, I'm a titled Sports and Exercise Physiotherapist, and I had the privilege of being an elite athlete nearly my whole life, 2/3 of my whole life, and I became pregnant during my elite career and struggled to comprehend how there was a large lack of information regarding pregnancy and training during that elite athlete time period, and particularly postpartum. So I dived heavily into the research, and that's why I'm here today speaking at the Women's in Sports Conference, basically as an advocate from the athlete perspective as well as the physio perspective of our profession needing to be able to translate this emerging research into clinical practice so we can help support athletes better in the future.
You wanted to keep exercising through your pregnancy at the highest level you could safely do so. What was the response that you got from doctors, midwives, other health professionals you consulted during this time?
Not great, to be honest. I was told at the end of my first trimester that I shouldn't squat more than an empty barbell. Now at that point, I just retired from one of my sports, being Olympic weightlifting, so I would normally be back squatting 130 kilos, and I was told I couldn't do more than an empty barbell, and that didn't sit right with me. That made me think that I would be detraining throughout this 9-month period rather than keeping my exercise routine and my health and safety. So I really wanted to keep training for my own benefit physically as well as mentally. It was a huge part of me, and I didn't want pregnancy to take away that aspect of my life. And I was aware of some really new research emerging data that, you know, exercise during pregnancy was actually super beneficial for the baby as well. So if it meant that I could have great mental health and enjoy the things I wanted to do, keep fit and healthy as well as benefit my baby, then of course it was something that I wanted to do.
What did you discover about the research that was out there into exercise during pregnancy and postpartum, and how that knowledge would translate to you as an elite athlete?
Some of the data that was coming out, particularly from some of the universities over in Canada, so the University of Alberta has been putting out a vast array of articles over the last 2 to 3 years, and statistics as strong as exercising 150 minutes per week reduces your likelihood of gestational diabetes by 40% and preeclampsia and gestational hypertension by 39% is pretty wild to me. It's something that I was already doing, and yet when I walk into an obstetrician and they tell me to stop exercising, or a midwife and they tell you to stop exercising, I really was shocked that unfortunately this fabulous data wasn't being translated into clinical practice.
So based on the research that you did into what the evidence was, what did you implement to keep yourself in as close to elite condition as you could, both during and after the pregnancy?
Yeah, so during my pregnancy, I trained up until the day I gave birth. I back squatted 100 kilos at 39 weeks pregnant. I ran 5 kilometres at 38 weeks pregnant, and I water skied, albeit highly modified, in my first and second trimester. And I did that confidently because using this evidence that I knew I was well across, and I'd contacted the researchers as well to really dive into the nuts and bolts of those articles. I knew more, unfortunately, than those that were meant to be guiding me. So it came really as a challenge to myself. How much of this knowledge could I translate to others? Could I start informing these obstetricians and these midwives that there is articles out there and evidence out there, and we need to change how we're framing this? And one of the fabulous quotes that I love the most by Dr. Margie Davenport is, we shouldn't be saying what is the risk of exercising during pregnancy. We should be saying what is the risk of not exercising during pregnancy.
As a result of your own experiences, what would you like to see in place for other women in elite sports who might want or need to return to sport after having a baby?
Support. I know it sounds so simple, and it's really sad that, you know, on one hand it's really positive. In the last 12 months we've seen so many different national sporting organisation and international sporting organisations start putting in policies to protect their athletes, and that's fabulous. But we're in 2026, and that's only started in 2025. You know, the protection of sponsorship contracts, the protection of world rankings to enable you to go off and have this time period in your life and then be able to come back. The support from obstetrician and midwives that what you're doing is okay You know, I knew I was following the evidence and I still would have to fight with them of whether or not it was okay, or I would just have to keep my mouth shut and not tell them because I was scared of the criticism or the stigma that was associated with that. So just support from those that should be aware of the knowledge and hopefully will be if we can start translating it into clinical practice a bit more.
Okay, well Jacinta, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to chat with me about your research.
No worries, thank you.